Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in a freshly sanitized Mackey Arena following Purdue's 70-53 loss to Michigan on a very eventful night for Purdue basketball. This will be a wrap video again following that Purdue-Michigan game. It is brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Union Club Hotel. Next time you plan a trip to campus, please keep them in mind for all of your accommodations, because I know how you like accommodations. Diving right into this here, obviously this was a setback of a day for Purdue basketball. They'd won 4 in a row. They'd really built up a lot of momentum. They had established themselves really as the hottest team in the Big Ten. They'd won 4 in a row, 3 of those games on the road against in pretty typically historically hard places to win in Michigan State, Ohio State, and Indiana. Sasha Stefanovic gets COVID. That's that was always the landmine for this season for everybody trying to play college basketball. Now, the thing about this for Purdue, I can tell you, without violating any, sort of ethical boundaries that I hold myself to here, COVID-19's path to affecting Purdue this season, if you know what I mean, was a very narrow one. And as I said about Stefanovic prior to the game in our little blog, this is almost like a Private Ryan kind of situation where last man standing, protect him at all costs kind of thing. And sure enough, this is the occupational hazard of trying to play college basketball pandemic. It's always been the ugly little gremlin waiting to stick its hideous little face out. And sure enough, it got Purdue in an opportune time. Not that there's ever a good time. Want to obviously add that, obviously, hoping for the best for Sasha Stefanovic. I know many of you will say, "Oh, well, he's young. He won't die from this." Well, Emmanuel Dewona is young too, and he's practiced like 5 times all year. So spare me. I know you're getting sick of hearing that, but I think it's an important point to make. Hey, if there's any issues with the volume here, let me know. I've stopped putting my earbuds in because I found I was yelling too much because I couldn't hear myself. So made a little halftime adjustment there and did away with the earbuds. I don't know why I was using them in the first place. All right, back to the game. 70-53, Purdue loses to Michigan. Would Purdue have beaten Michigan with Sasha Stefanovic? I don't know. Michigan is really good. Michigan's a borderline elite team. Really hard to say. No way of knowing. I say they would have had their hands full nonetheless. But I did pick them, by the way, to win before I knew about Stefanovic. Had I known about Stefanovic, obviously I would have picked them to lose by double figures, probably. If Purdue had Stefanovic, I take that back. I probably would have picked them to lose by like 6 or 7, not double figures. Had they had Stefanovic, I point that out because I'm about to say something that statement would completely undermine. Had Purdue had Stefanovic, they would have scored more than 53 points. That much I can promise you. Would they have held Michigan still to 70, and then, if they get 65, lost, 70-65? I don't know. I have no idea. This is all just hypothetical dart throwing. But I can't. I guess, I hope, I don't know how many people realize, I'm struggling for words here, that's very uncommon for me. I don't know if people realize how much Sasha Stefanovic means to Purdue offensively. Like, the way I'd put it is, he's kind of like the wide receiver in football who is the big play threat all the time, who opens things up for everybody else, commands attention, requires a defense to know where he is at all times, that kind of thing. If you go back and really watch the nuance of what Purdue does, Stefanovic is running a route, so to speak, on damn near all of their sets. And when he doesn't get shots, that doesn't mean the defense isn't still committing significant resources to being there to cover him. And that opens up a ton of stuff, for other people. They call it like sacrificial cuts, where he moves the defense out of a certain spot, somebody comes into it, all of a sudden they have a shot, or somebody overplays Stefanovic. Very similar to the actions Purdue played off with Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein a couple of years ago, where defenses had to make a choice how they were going to guard them first and foremost. Purdue played off that, the opposite of what it used to be like with Isaac Haas, where defenses had to make a choice whether to double team him or whatever, and then Purdue played off of that. If you guarded ball screens a certain way with Carson Edwards and Ryan Klein, Purdue played off that. They slipped Matt Harms to the basket. They had Nogel Eastern stationed in the corner for baseline drives. Grady Eifert, Aaron Wheeler were rolling to the three-point line for those indirect three-pointers. It was all based off that action. And a big part of what Purdue does, this year is based on, so much of what Stefanovic does, running those baseline sprints, coming off those down screens. Their baseline out of bounds stuff has been pure fire here lately. And a big part of that is, they're running Stefanovic silly. And it's at bare minimum, it's eye candy for defenses to have to worry about. He's a big part of Purdue's offense. He's a huge part of Purdue's offense. You can make an argument he's the most important part of Purdue's offense. I know, Travion Williams and Zach Edey obviously are the centerpiece. But again, so much of what they do is centralized in Sasha Stefanovic. Now, should you be in a place personnel-wise where you have somebody who you can lose one player like that and you don't, fall off the face of the earth offensively? Maybe. But when you have 2 days of practice to prepare, it's very similar to when Robbie Hummel got hurt the second time. Purdue had to turn right around and play Michigan State here. Had Chris Kramer guarding the 4. Had Purdue had a couple practices, or if they had a bad team to practice it or to play against before they played Michigan State, things might have turned out differently against Michigan State. Here, you get thrown this curveball, a really important player. You get basically 2 practices to prepare for life without him, and you get to play the number 17 team in the country, a team with elite talent at certain positions and experience everywhere else. These guys are loaded with seniors, and they're loaded with NBA players. They've probably got 2 NBA players, maybe 3 on this team, and they're just a real handful. And had this been Nebraska today, which who knows if Purdue will ever get to play Nebraska because they have too much COVID, things turn out differently. There are teams Purdue can beat probably in the Big Ten without Sasha Stefanovic. Off 2 days practice, you're just not beating Michigan. Michigan was not one of those teams, is what I was about to say, but off 2 days practice, really, really a tough deal here. The other point I wanted to make, too, is, when you need a replacement to fill in for a 3-year veteran, a 2-year starter, and your most established and probably most reliable player, it really pours alcohol on the open wound of your youth. And that is still a reality for Purdue. They're still a young team. When you remove experience from the equation, it just shines more of a light on inexperience. And that just puts Purdue in the unique situation here where not only did you have two days to practice, but you're just so woefully short now on experience that throwing this team out there on insufficient preparation time with the inexperience that they have is just a toxic mix, a real Molotov cocktail here. Brandon Newman's playing a different position tonight. Now, I don't know exactly how – you're not exactly reinventing the wheel going from the 2 to the 3, I don't think. But the plays are different. The matchups are different. And it's a big deal, and you're doing it on 2 days practice. I think he probably plays that position a little bit anyway, so he probably has a cursory knowledge of it. But you're also casting Jaden Ivey into a much more prominent role, and that puts you even more – kind of at the mercy of his youthful decision-making indiscretions sometimes that are perfectly understandable and part of the process toward him being a really good player at Purdue, but an unskippable part of the process, unavoidably, sorry. But also his defensive inexperience, too, really shows up a little more as well when he's cast into a larger role. Just a really toxic mix here for Purdue. Purdue has played 10 games with their entire core of key players. They've played 10 games ever since Jaden Ivey came back, joining Eric Hunter in the lineup for the Ohio State game between then and today. This is the 4th major personnel incident Purdue's run into, counting Emmanuel Delona's issues all year long, Eric Hunter's knee, Jaden Ivey's foot, Sasha Stefanovic's COVID-19. That is 4 major personnel issues you've had. 3 of those are key players. who you have played 10 games with all at once. And in those 10 games, Purdue was 7-3. They won 4 in a row, 3 of those games on the road. They were getting better and better and better, and Purdue was really improving. And there's no telling, what Purdue might have been in this game or these next 3 or 4 games, however many games Stefanovic is going to miss, had normal progress been allowed to run its course. It was not. Another disruption for Purdue in a season that has always been the landmine that you're just hoping to get by without. Purdue wasn't so fortunate. But the good news here is that, Purdue is still, on track here to really do something this season. The better news is you've got 8 days off here, so you'll get 3-4 solid practices in here, if not 5 practices in here before you have to worry about Minnesota. You will have a little bit of an ability to adjust on the fly to recreate yourself as needed. Again, as I said before, had Purdue had a couple of practices or another game instead of Michigan State years ago when Hummel got hurt, you might have been able to come up with some answers before you had to actually roll out there again and play. But Purdue, has a week now to try to make the best of this. It's a really tough situation. This team offensively is kind of like a Jenga deal where, every piece plays an integral role. When you pull one out, the whole thing can fall down. Purdue isn't going to completely implode offensively, but a team that was getting better, I think, takes a step backward clearly without him, his experience, and his skill set out there. So Purdue, again, has a week here to try to figure out some answers. You won't be playing a team as good as Michigan again the rest of the season, I don't think. You get Minnesota here at Mackey Arena next weekend. Minnesota's obviously very good. They've had a great year. They beat Michigan. We'll see. Purdue's got a week to prepare, maybe a little bit of ability to slip through some unknown here on Minnesota, draw up some new plays, whatever it may be. We'll see what they're capable of, but Purdue misses Stefanovic in a big way. I will tell you that, and there was no win in this game tonight without quite certain of that. So that's what I got, folks, from Mackey Arena. This is Brian Neubert from GoldenBlack.com. Thank you to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your promotional considerations. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. And thank you for processing our materials. However you process our materials. Talk to you again next weekend after Purdue plays Minnesota. Hoser.